Hello, Ken Bruce here. Welcome to this week's Tracks of My Years, a chance to hear every choice by my guest from the weekday mid-morning show, all in one place, right here. And this week it's the turn of Scottish singer-songwriter, musician and actress Shirley Manson. She's best known, of course, as lead singer of Garbage. That, of course, was the title track to the 1999 Bond film starring Pierce Brosnan, The World Is Not Enough. Music by David Arnold, lyrics by the one and only Don Black. Apparently, when David offered the theme to the Garbage lead singer, Shirley Manson, she was very enthusiastic, and he said he'd never heard someone screaming down the phone before. But, you know, it is quite an honour to be offered a Bond song. We'll hear more stories like that by Shirley throughout the show, including the reason behind her first choice, and if you're a certain age, this piece of nostalgia will bring back many childhood memories. It's Jacky and White Horses.
On white horses, let me ride away to my world of dreams so far away. Let me run away.
The The reason why this song is so important to me is because it was the first song where I exercised my own, in inverted commas, taste, in that I fell in love with the TV show White Horses, of which this was the theme tune. And with my own pocket money, I bought the 7-inch, which I still have. It's my most treasured possession. I had a really bad flood about a decade ago and it destroyed my record collection, but miraculously, this 7-inch survived. And it is the sound of my youth. It's the sound of my mum. It's the sound of my sisters and the 70s in Scotland and just falling in love with music. And I want this played at my funeral.
Oh, well, that's been a long time away.
You never know, Ken, you never know.
But it's so much the part of so many people's childhood that it has struck so many chords with people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love the sound of her voice. Like, people don't really sing like that anymore. Like, we're currently living in a period where all the female singers are like real big theatre, Broadway type singers. And she has just such a sweet, soft, effortless voice, sort of breathy and open. And I just think it sounds sublime. It's the sound of the heavens.
A gentle, gentle sound. Now, at the time, you were quite young. Were you into music in any other way?
You know, it's funny because I never think of myself as particularly musical, but I was singing on the stage from about the age of 3 with my ballet school. We would perform and I would sing and dance. And then my mum and dad signed me up to an all-girls choir, which I loved and was active in until I was about 15, which is where really I learned how to harmonise and stuff like that. So, and my mum was a musician. So yeah, music's been a big part of my life really growing up.
Well, we can see that, and the range of music you've chosen this week demonstrates your love of music. Next, we've got Ella Fitzgerald singing Blue Skies. So tell me about that choice, please.
Well, Ella Fitzgerald was someone that was introduced to me by my mother. My mum was a singer in a swing band called the Squadronaires. So she loved music and she was always playing me records, and Ella Fitzgerald was one of her favourites. And I associate Ella Fitzgerald with my mother, and it also became a sort of introduction to the whole glut of jazz singers that I fell in love with and I'm still in love with, like Nina Simone, Billie Holiday, Peggy Lee, singers like that, Sarah Vaughan. They were all singers that I was listening to growing up. But as I've gotten older, my appreciation for Ella Fitzgerald's story has become more intense. And of course, she's one of the most revered jazz singers of all time. But her ability to scat and her ability to imitate a horn like Louis Armstrong's horn. And this particular song, Blue Skies, she does an incredible version of that. You can really hear her phenomenal talent.
Well, many people have covered that wonderful Irving Berlin standard, Blue Skies. Al Jolson, Fred Astaire, Bing Crosby, even Willie Nelson had a country hit with it. But of course, that was the singer who made great songs greater, Ella Fitzgerald. Well, in over 30 years of broadcasting on the Eurovision Song Contest, Sir Terry Wogan maintained he had only guessed the winner correctly once. That was back in 1974, when 4 Swedish musicians burst onto the Brighton Dome stage, draped in dubious 70s clothing, singing the insanely catchy Waterloo. ABBA had arrived, and as Terry always used to say, ABBA. I wonder what happened to them.
I was obsessed with the Eurovision Song Contest growing up. Me and my two sisters, we were just so into the competition and it captured our imagination. And the year, which I think it was in 1974 when ABBA appeared singing Waterloo, and me and my sisters just went crazy for them. And I've just been obsessed by them ever since, and so have my band. Like, we always reference ABBA's ability to write, amazing pop writers. And I don't think they've written a bad song. But Waterloo is synonymous for me with my sisters, with my falling in love with a concept of a band. And they were sort of the first band I ever fell in love with, and I loved their style, and I was obsessed with Agnetha and Frida, and I was obsessed with their different types of microphones. And I don't know, it was me beginning to sort of like expand my horizons. And it's a wonderful song.
It is a wonderful song, and as you say, they're tremendous musicians. But your appreciation, as we were saying the other day, seems to be so wide of music. You were in this girls' choir, as you said earlier on, and doing some early stage work as a child. Did you have a kind of formal musical education at all?
Yeah, I mean, I studied piano outside of school, but inside of school, I got picked out as one of the kids to learn an instrument. So I was playing in the school orchestra, I played violin. And then I learnt clarinet in secondary school. So, I mean, I had a fairly well-grounded schooling. And attached to my particular high school, we had a recording studio and a music school attached to that too. So, yeah, I would say I had a pretty good education.
And how useful do you think that has been to you?
I think as I get older and I get a little more adventurous, it's been very useful. I'm not entirely sure it was particularly useful earlier on, although again, certainly singing in a choir was invaluable to learning how to harmonise and being comfortable with other people. Lots of people that do what I do, like lead vocals, are terrible at singing with other people. Like, they just can't seem to hold a tune when other people are singing around them. It's quite common, even more common than you would think. So to learn how to sing with others, it truly is a gift, and I'm very grateful for it.
Now, the Beatles, they had some pretty good harmonies at times, so you've chosen one by them. What's it going to be?
Well, I chose You Never Give Me Your Money because that was a song that, talking about my school and having a recording studio attached to it, the first time I ever walked into a music studio was at school, at Broughton High School in Edinburgh, Scotland. And it was an incredible privilege, and it was unbelievably exciting. And we got to record You Never Give Me Your Money by the Beatles. And I mean, I'm a Beatles fan for life. It's a band that I have been obsessed with since I was small. And then I associate it with my first recording experience. So, and of course, this is a song about the music industry, which if you've ever been a recording musician, you know all about only too well. So it's appropriate to my life too.
Abbey Road album. The Beatles, of course, You Never Give Me Your Money. Next, it's Siouxsie and the Banshees. Lead singer Siouxsie Sioux has been described as one of the most influential British singers of the rock era. Shirley agrees with that, and we'll hear why after we hear Happy House.
Siouxsie is one of my all-time icons and arguably one of the most influential musicians of my entire life. And I fell in love with her. I saw her on Top of the Pops. I'd never seen anything like it. Here was somebody that was challenging sort of the traditional roles that women were expected to embody, and she just seemed like she was coming from another planet entirely and was really fierce and strong and powerful. And I didn't feel she was playing this sort of male-pleasing kind of sex kitten-y thing. She was almost androgynous in a funny way, and it just really spoke to me deeply. And she's still someone I think of every time I'm in the vocal booth. I think, let me inject a little bit of Siouxsie right here if I can.
Is that a sort of pivotal moment for you? Did you then kind of think, I can move away from the expected style of music that I've been doing?
Yeah, I think it was. And also just the way she presented herself, she would be wearing suits, or she'd be wearing like really weird sort of almost like tribal wear and crazy hair, like something I'd never seen before, and white makeup and black eyes. And so she influenced my sense of style as well. And yeah, definitely took me on an entirely different trip.
I'm Ken Bruce. You're listening to Shirley Manson with her picks on Tracks of My Years. Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie is what you're going for next. So where does that come in your development?
Well, around the same time as Siouxsie, I discovered David Bowie. I actually had a friend at school called Lisa Cameron, and her father had an amazing record collection, and she introduced me to like Roxy Music and Michael Jackson, but the one that captured my imagination was Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie. And for the same reasons that I list about Siouxsie Sioux, I fell in love with David Bowie. This was a person that I was being told was male, but he was wearing makeup and high heels and just presented himself in an entirely different way to the way I had learnt that men were supposed to present themselves. I found it perplexing, and he seemed like an alien, and I've loved him ever since. And of course, Ziggy Stardust is one of my like desert island discs. I would take that away with me. It's sort of the soundtrack to my life in a way. I know that record inside out, every word, every phrase, every riff, everything about it. It's magic.
If we're talking about singers that changed the face and style of music, then David Bowie is up there with the best. One of his most memorable looks, a bright red mullet, Ziggy Stardust there. Shirley's band Garbage owes more than a nod to an indie pop band from Coventry, best known for their 1988 international hit single Crash. Here are the Primitives.
Here you go, way too fast. Don't slow down, you're gonna crash. You should watch your step. Don't look out, gonna break your neck. So shut your mouth. 'Cause I'm not listening anyhow. I had enough of you. Enough to last a lifetime through. So what do you want of me?
I always like to name check this particular song because it represents a moment in my life where I finally felt like I was on my own trajectory as a musician. I was in a band called Goodbye Mr. Mackenzie, a Scottish band, and we were invited to open up for the Primitives. We were having a big hit at the time in Britain with this single Crash, and we got to go on tour and open up for them in Britain. And I was obsessed by Tracy, the lead singer, and she at that time was the most famous person I had ever met. And I was just kind of entranced by her, and I projected all my fantasies onto her and imagined what it must be like to be her and be up there on the stage. And yeah, I always think of her as right at the beginning of my career is synonymous with this song Crash. And so I have really good feelings about it. It feels like the gate opening to my future.
Now, you were mentioning Goodbye Mr. Mackenzie, that band. That led on to Garbage, is that right?
That is correct.
How did that happen?
It's a very good question. It's actually a really long story because right in the middle was a band called Angelfish, which was the bridge between Goodbye Mr. Mackenzie and Garbage. And Steve Marker in Garbage was looking for a singer, and he saw me performing on MTV one night at 3:00 in the morning with Angelfish, and he was like, she's got a good voice and she might be somebody we might consider working with. They called me up. We all got on like a house on fire, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, that was a very short story, in fact.
Yeah, well, I'm well practiced in telling it. It's a bit of a long story.
Well, let's move on to your next one, which is Salt-N-Pepa and Push It.
Well, I suddenly realised that, of course, I have never actually given Salt-N-Pepa their flowers, because not only did they inspire the title of one of our most successful songs off our second record, which is a track called, surprisingly, Push It also. They were like a portal into an entirely different kind of music than I'd ever heard before. So all of a sudden, through Salt-N-Pepa, I was listening to De La Soul, Public Enemy, NWA, Tupac. All these kind of artists were exposed to me through Salt-N-Pepa, and I'm just incredibly grateful to them, and I'm obsessed with this song to this day.
Salt-N-Pepa and Push It. Surprisingly, a bigger hit here in the UK than it was in America, proving that we all borrow a little from one another from time to time. And the hip-hop group from New York freely admit using the Kinks' You Really Got Me fairly prominently in that. Well, a theme that seems to run through many of Shirley's choices: strong female lead singers who refuse to fit in with the norm, adding their own unique blend to the music industry. And if you were painted by the legendary pop artist Andy Warhol, I guess you had to be up there with the finest. Debbie Harry defined a generation, and with her band Blondie, they released nearly 40 hit singles. Shirley's claim to fame is not only touring with them and counting Debbie as a fan, but in 2006, she got to induct Blondie into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Her pick, Union City Blue.
Debbie Harry has been someone who has been a fixture almost in my entire musical career. Again, I reference Goodbye Mr. Mackenzie. I was on tour with Goodbye Mr. Mackenzie, supporting Debbie Harry on her solo tour in the UK in the 80s, if you can imagine. And that's where I first met Debbie. And she then introduced me to her manager, who took a shine to me and said, look, if you ever do anything on your own in musical terms, give me a shout. And so when Goodbye Mr. Mackenzie sort of hit the skids, I called Gary Kerfurst up, who's a very influential, famous music manager who looked after like the Ramones, Blondie, Talking Heads. I mean, really impeccable artists. And he then encouraged me to start my own band, Angelfish. And then that became, as I said earlier this week, the bridge to my career in Garbage. So Debbie has been instrumental in sort of helping me along the way. And she used to come to my shows with Angelfish. I supported the Ramones at the Academy in New York one year, and there she was in the mosh pit. And then, of course, invited Garbage a couple of years ago now to co-headline with Blondie on a tour of America. And now this year in autumn, we'll be coming to the UK to open up for Blondie once again, which will be an incredible honour. And so I wanted to represent Debbie here because I felt it was important.
Great. Well, that'll be a terrific night out for a lot of us. November, that sort of time this year, that'll be
That's
happening?
right.
Good.
Yep.
Looking forward
Yep.
to that. The album, No Gods, No Masters, a lot of people have produced albums through lockdown. Does this come from lockdown or does it predate that?
It predated it. We were so lucky. We had it in the bag. We finished it basically the week before lockdown.
And of course, as we were hearing, it's your first new material in 5 years. Has that been deliberate or is it just we need to take time?
That's a good question. I don't know. We're like some strange fumbling idiots in the dark. Like we just get things done when we get things done. And we seem to be a lot slower than most of the other children in class. And somehow we come up smelling of roses. We're really lucky.
Okay, well, we'll smell the roses now. As we listen to the Cocteau Twins, this is your final choice. Why is this here?
Again, this is music that I want to be buried to. And Elizabeth Fraser is one of my all-time favourite singers. She showed me that there was a different way of vocally presenting in a non-traditional way. I'd never heard anything like her really before. She kind of predated Bjork. Bjork did the same kind of thing for me, that just this very unique way of singing. And the Cocteau Twins, we, of course, claim as our own in Scotland. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I could... Get out of Scotland's the wrong turn of phrase because it's not about getting out of Scotland, but it was like getting into the sort of international stage. I felt like, well, if Liz Fraser could do it, anyone can do it in terms of like, she made everything look possible for all of us. And that's invaluable, and she's a hero of mine.
Quite rightly too. And I'm delighted to say that you'll be able to catch up with Garbage later this year, the co-headline arena tour with Blondie, and of course the album No Gods, No Masters. Shirley, it's been terrific talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken. Cheers.
Grangemouth's finest, the Cocteau twins, with their debut hit from 1984, Pearly, Dewdrops, Drops. Well, thanks once again to Shirley Manson for her varied choices in this week's Tracks of My Years. As I said, good luck with the album No Gods, No Masters and the tour with Blondie later this year.